Hello, everyone. Welcome to Afro Girl Diaries. Today I have Kevin joining me, a special guest who I've known for quite a long time. Today's video is going to be focused on his career, so a career in software engineering. But as you'll find out, he's not actually been in that career only. He's had a few switches, and we're going to talk about that. So if you are considering switching your career, then maybe this will be of very much benefit to you. But without further ado, I'll introduce Kevin. Kevin, if you can just say hi to everyone and we can get started.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Kevin, and I'm looking forward to sharing my career journey. It's going to be a wild one, so hope you guys enjoy it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If you have any questions after you've watched this video, please make sure to put them in the comment section. I'll make sure to get back to you on those or even cover them in a future video. But yeah, so Kevin, of course, people might not know you, some people might, but if you can just introduce yourself in terms of what do you do, and also just walk us through your background in terms of what did you study, and basically how your career journey has been so far.
Okay, so I can start from, I guess, the beginning or where I am now. Currently live in Birmingham, UK, and I'm a software engineer for a bank. Uh, Initially, I came to the UK just for university, as most Kenyans would do. But afterwards, I decided, maybe let me stay here a bit, gain some more kind of international exposure, work with different companies. So I've been living here 5, 6 years after uni, and I've had a fair few changes in career. I was in the same university as Belinda, so we went to University of Manchester together. I did a degree in electrical and electronic engineering with a year in industrial experience, which is the story of its own. I mainly focused on the power side. I wanted to initially be a power engineer, so dealing with things like renewables and just kind of electrical infrastructure, because that's kind of what drove me when I was back in university. And I even did a placement at a power company that operated in the London, Southeast, and Eastern region. And I engaged in quite a few interesting projects, actually. I think it was during the time of the renewable energy boom in the UK. So there were a lot of like renewable kind of energy companies coming up. And that was what I was really interested at the time. And it's what I really wanted to do after university. But then after doing that, I went into my final and fourth year, where I kind of now properly like focused in power. And then after that, I reapplied to the same company that I did my placement in, and things didn't really turn out as I wanted. So at that point is when the renewable energy boom was kind of going down, and the job they kind of offered me at the time was not necessarily what I wanted to do. Is it was more of a fault finding kind of experience, which is not really something I was interested in. So that's when I made my first kind of detour. Feel free to like step in and ask me any questions, by the way, because I might
Honestly,
just go on a tangent.
no, 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 you are literally on track. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is when I made my first tangent into a completely different industry. I didn't know what it was about, but that's when I joined a company called Siemens. So they deal with a lot of things. People might know them for their phones, which they don't do, by the way. Just a bit of an FYI. One of the things they actually mentioned in their interview is if you ever mention anything about phones, you're going to fail this interview, as a joke. But they do loads of things. So they deal with like healthcare, they deal with like uh, electrical infrastructure, and they deal with things like mobility, which includes like trains and kind of the train infrastructure, which is basically where I entered into after uni. It was interesting at first. At that point, I was still kind of unsure of what I wanted to do uh, in terms of my career at that point. So they had this graduate program, which was quite good because it gave me a lot of exposure.
Mhm.
So I managed to like try out different things in different departments. I tried out crazy things. I tried out software engineering at first, then I went to system engineering, then I went into sustainability, which was a completely different field for me. So this is where I was kind of like analyzing the impact of like the products that the company was using on the actual environment,
Mhm.
because it was becoming more of a kind of compliance kind of thing when we actually kind of uh, come up with those project bids. In order to win like an actual tender, you needed to kind of show your environmental impact. So that was really interesting, actually. But then after that, there was this opportunity to go to Germany, which I
Yeah.
decided, okay, yeah, let me just kind of jump on this. Went to Germany for a bit. It was to do with systems engineering, again, but more of a strategic kind of perspective. So I guess when I say strategic, is more like business side. So you're kind of looking at a holistic view of how everything's operating, what products are there, how we can break into new markets, what are our competitors doing.
So not
It,
actual field work, but yeah.
yeah, not actual fieldwork, but like I guess
Mm,
business strategy, which was quite interesting. Like it's good to kind of see an overview,
yeah.
and I guess that was something that really interested me again, and was something I wanted to explore further. But then when my time was up in Germany, I had to come back to the UK, and then opportunities started to kind of reduce in a weird way. Uh, and the kind of roles that I was offered after my grad role were very minimal. Um,
Mm,
so I kind of went into this kind of control systems engineering role, which I thought would be the closest thing to what I wanted to do. It wasn't exactly the 100% the thing I wanted to do, but I thought, yeah, it'd be interesting. And my manager at the time was like, "Oh, Kevin, we need to like improve our processes. Can you code?" And I was like, "Sure." And that's how I got into software engineering and
um,
did so many projects, particularly to do with kind of improvement in terms of how they were developing the product. So I developed many like Windows applications, which is quite fun. It was quite good because I was given my own flexibility. I did my own thing, and like there wasn't necessarily any pressure on me, which was a good environment to not only learn like a lot of software engineering principles, but like just to grow in that particular field. Uh, I stayed there for like 3 years, and this opportunity at Goldman Sachs kind of came up, and I was like, ah, let me try and do something different, and kind of went through the whole process. And here's where I am at working in a bank, which I never expected myself to be at, working in software engineering as well. So there's a bit of multiple switches there.
yeah, but I can see like a natural transition between them, which I'm going to ask you a few more questions on that, just so that we can get more information, something that can help someone out there. But now that you've reached your software engineering role, the one that you do currently, maybe in layman's terms, if you can just walk us through what you do day to day.
Basically, I am a back-end engineer. We're developing this kind of application that is looking to kind of revolutionize one of the financial instruments that we do actually provide. Um, so there are different layers to this particular application. So you have the client-facing side, which generally looks to build the actual user interface and user experience. Then after that, we have this API, which is the application programming interface, which is basically the brains of the actual application. And that's what kind of interacts with different services, different resources, different databases. And that's where I sit. I sit at that level. So we're designing this whole interface. We're doing it in Python. It's basically, I guess, the language of fintech nowadays. That's the most preferred language when it comes to building APIs, because you can easily like build something like really quickly. So I've been working as a backend engineer, but now I'm kind of transitioning into a new role, because as the team kind of scales, we need to be able to like delegate better. So now I've assumed more of a facilitation role where I'm just kind of ensuring that the designs are as they should be, coming up with new designs, and basically unblocking everyone within the team and trying to deliver as much as we can, as quickly as we can on a very new greenfield project, by the way. So like every day is a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Would it be fair? Of course, I'm not that familiar with software engineering, but would you consider your new role now more like a scrum master or what?
I am. I am not the Scrum Master, but I guess it's because we actually do have a Scrum Master, and they're basically in charge of like managing, I guess, all the other different teams. It's really weird. We do use agile practices, but each team would kind of have a team lead, and
Mm,
I'm one of the team leads, and I effectively will kind of facilitate things like the stand-ups. If you're familiar with like how Scrum works and how Agile works, you have certain like artifacts, and like I guess stand-ups would be one of them. Your sprints, your sprint retrospectives, sprint planning. So all these things I will facilitate. I guess you could say that is effectively my role now.
okay, perfect. Thanks for that, Kevin. Now you mentioned that we did the same degree, at least to the majority of the extent. I did electronic engineering. You did the full triple E, but in as part of our degree, we never covered agile principles, software engineering principles. We touched on coding here and there, but it really did depend on what one specialized in. And given you were specialized in power, I guess you really just did the basic coding that we were forced to do, all of us. So
Right.
now you're in full on development. Really, how did you manage to upskill yourself, and how has the environment changed from where you were managing yourself in your previous company, where it was more like a learning and trial and error thing, to this is actually your job? So, how have you managed to upskill yourself and get comfortable?
So obviously, like in my previous company, when they gave me that, sorry, when they gave me that opportunity to actually code, I think that was kind of one of the initial kind of entries into coding. So they kind of allowed me to like just learn as much as possible because they saw it as an investment. They were like, whatever courses you need to do those courses. So I kind of started looking at sites like Pluralsight. There's also LinkedIn Learning, which I'm not necessarily a big fan of. There's also Coursera. But I think also Udemy is great. And I think Udemy is probably more of a cost effective kind of way of learning how to code as opposed to getting the others because they require some sort of annual subscription that's worth like hundreds of pounds.
Mm, mm,
I guess that translates into like thousands of Kenya shillings for the Kenyan audience as well. But then I guess uh, beyond that, I decided to kind of take the initiative to kind of learn like different things, kind of look what's up there, look what tech is kind of up and coming, what the industry kind of uses, and I just kind of started to do my own different like little projects. I did some silly projects here and there, but I feel like they helped me learn. Like they didn't necessarily come to fruition, but the skills I was able to kind of learn doing all these like independent projects, I think it was quite essential to actually learning software engineering. Because I mean, like you can always go and look at a course online on YouTube or whatever, and unless you're actually applying it, you're not really kind of learning as well as you could. But as long as you're kind of learning all that and actually applying it in an actual project that you can actually see results from, I think that's probably what is the most key in terms of like upskilling yourself to actually get the relevant kind of skills within software engineering. But to be fair, it's not always about kind of the programming language as such. I think it's also about the way of thinking because you can have software engineers who are like robots, effectively, where they just kind of come in and someone tells them, okay, we just need this done, and they'll just kind of do it in that exact way. But if you're also able to be a like logical, analytical thinker, where you can now start thinking outside the box, start thinking about different solutions, I
yeah.
think that's actually more of a key skill to actually learn. And that's where like working on these independent projects can also help you because you basically have free reign in terms of exploring different kind of ways of doing things. You can start refining and all that stuff just comes into play when actually becoming like I guess a decent software engineer.
Perfect. And I'm curious to know the 5 years that you studied at Manchester. Um, how do you see it coming into play in your day to day now as a software engineer? Do you think any of that has contributed to making you a better software engineer? Maybe if you can just highlight certain things that you think have been beneficial with your engineering background.
I think probably just I think when you do engineering, you do definitely get exposed to a lot of like different problems, and I think it's that problem solving kind of ethos that was kind of I guess injected to us when we were in uni that is quite beneficial as you kind of come out. It's quite I feel like sometimes it can be quite an understated thing, but like it
Yeah.
is really essential. Like when it
Yeah.
comes to like solving real world challenges.
I agree. Yeah, definitely for me, because I'm also in a completely different career to what we studied. I notice I tend to get straight. I tend to do that automatic root cause analysis of something and just get straight to the point when it's definitely beneficial. I'm just checking my phone to make sure I don't miss any questions that I wanted to definitely cover with you during this
Cool.
session. Yeah, so you've mentioned skills that you think are the most important. It sounded like it was more about logical thinking, analytical. Are there any other skills you want to highlight that you think are very important for a software engineer?
I think sometimes you have to be patient sometimes, because you might be kind of working on a particular kind of product or module, and you find yourself like banging your head on the table. Why doesn't this work? Kind of thing, and you're not really sure why. You've tried everything. You try and do the same thing and it doesn't work. Then all of a sudden, like it kind of works, and you're like confused as to why it does.
Yeah,
But I think it's just kind of all part of the experience. Like, you definitely need to be a bit patient. And because I meet a lot of people who are like, oh, Kevin, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you became a software engineer. But like, turns out most people are not patient, like when it comes to the whole software engineering aspect. And at the end of the day, like programming is just all about like syntax and all that kind of stuff. That that if you just like look do some googling, like a lot of software engineering, like a lot of programming actually involves googling. Like if you look at movies, you see like some hackers doing with some green screen or like typing all
mm,
sorts of stuff, random stuff that really doesn't make sense. But you'll find that a normal like software engineer or programmer, they'll be on Google Stack Overflow just kind of copying solutions and that kind of thing. Like honestly, being a good software engineer is just having the ability to be a good Googler, in my
yeah.
honest opinion. But
Knowing
I
where
feel
to
like
find information.
exactly, exactly, and this is why I kind of go back to the logical thinking. If you can think about like your solution, then actually programming it wouldn't be that difficult. Of course, like you need to have good programming practices, but like that's a story altogether, and like we can get into like a whole deep dive on that. But I feel that's not necessarily right for this particular platform.
Yeah, I think if there's anyone in the audience you're interested in the deep dive, let us know. But of course, at this point, it's more about just your career journey, you being able to switch and grow in your journey. And I know you mentioned about like it can get very crazy, very hectic. So how do you manage to have a healthy work? Do you even have a healthy work-life balance at the moment?
Well, I wouldn't lie to you. At the moment, it's a bit of a struggle, but that's because I'm just transitioning roles. But
Mm,
I think in order to kind of have a good work-life balance, you need to be able to set boundaries, uh, and you need to be kind of forceful with those particular boundaries. Like if someone is trying to make you work beyond what you feel you should be working, then you should be able to stand up and say, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. And I feel like people will respect that if you're like upfront with them and tell them like, oh, this is my time. Like I'll put in the effort, but like if you're not feeling great or if you feel like it's hampering you in any way, it's probably more beneficial for you to go home as opposed to kind of staying there like
yeah.
ridiculous hours and uh, just kind of losing sleep, and you will effectively find yourself not being productive.
Mm,
But then, I mean, having said that, looking at my actual situation, I'm not necessarily living by that statement. It's because obviously I feel like there's just kind of so much to learn. It's a whole different space for me. Like I know nothing about finance, so like I need to learn that
yeah.
side. I've moved into again a new kind of programming language, a new way of learning. So I need to learn that as well. So like it's just kind of putting all that together, and then also assuming this facilitation role. I just find myself kind of helping others and finding very little time to actually do what I need to do. So it tends to be quite a struggle, but I'm trying to establish ways where I can be more efficient, which I feel will feed into that kind of work-life balance afterwards. It's all a process. There's never like a formula that kind
Yeah.
of uh, fits everything, but like as long as you're working towards that, I think that's the most
Yeah.
important thing.
No, I completely agree. I relate a lot, especially the aspect of coaching other people, and then barely by the end of the day you can't even explain what you've done when it
Exactly.
comes
Yeah,
to your own
you feel like the day has just gone and you've done absolutely nothing. But what you find is that that coaching is really unblocking quite a few people down the line. So your business impact overall might be a lot bigger than you actually think. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate all of that. I think you've definitely taken us through a deep dive into your whole career journey. So just winding up now, if you can just walk us through, because I know during transitions there is the risk of you having to start over in the new career that area that you've gone into. So like for you moving from control systems engineering to software engineering, there's the risk of you having to start all over. But how have you managed to ensure that you've sold yourself the best that you could and you don't have to really be treated as an entry level person in the new area that you've gone into? How have you managed? Maybe if you can just finish with giving advice to someone out there how they can sell themselves, the transferability, wow, big one, of between the old career and the new one. How can they sell themselves? How did you do it, your own self?
I mean, to be fair, when I did my interview, there were a lot of things that they did ask me, and I was like, I'm not really familiar with that. And I was just upfront. Like that, I think the worst thing you can do is just lie,
Mm,
because it will catch up like at the end of the day. But what I did, I was truthful. I was like, no, I'm not really familiar with these technologies, but I'm willing to learn. And as long as you can show that you're willing to learn and willing to put in the effort, to kind of progress in your career, I think that's the most essential thing. Like when comparing myself to when I started to where I am now, if you told me that, yeah, you'd be effectively leading a team at this point in time, about 7 months ago, I'd have told you you're completely lying. There's no way that's possible because when I came in, I felt like I was very green. I just didn't know quite a
yeah,
lot.
yeah,
But obviously, like what I did is I was just like, yes, there were a few transferable skills, but like there were still like big pockets or big areas that they were just basically a black box for me. But what I did is I just kind of put in the effort, tried to work long hours, which was a terrible thing to do in hindsight. Kind of put in the hours just to kind of make up
yeah,
that knowledge. But the thing is, like, I realized if you're just patient with yourself, like you'll just absorb everything around you, like have conversations with different people, try and access like different resources, put yourself out there, like in terms of like giving presentations, because that's now what I do. I tend to give quite a lot of presentations, and
mm,
what I found is that that actually boosts your knowledge intake because you're obviously able to regurgitate like what you've
yeah,
learned, and I
yeah,
think that's definitely very key in terms of kind of developing you as a person and yourself within this new career. I mean, all I'd say is some people might say, oh, yeah, switching careers, you might be taking a couple of steps back. You might be looking at things around you. You might look at your friends and you're like, oh, yeah, they're going really far. And I'm kind of taking a step back in
mm,
terms of like starting a new career. But at the end of the day, you just have to run your own race. As long as you're happy with where you're at, I think
yeah.
that's the most important thing. Like, you shouldn't necessarily be too concerned about, oh, yeah, I feel like I'm taking a couple of steps back by making this career move. Like, no, just do what makes you happy at the end of the day. And I think that's the most essential thing.
Perfect. No, thank you so much, Kevin. It was really lovely to have you today. And for those of you who don't know, it's actually Saturday morning, so it's definitely a sacrifice that you've made to be here, and I really appreciate it. So
Yeah, definitely couldn't go out yesterday for sure.
I know. See, I was like, wow, 10 a.m. But you've made it, and I really appreciate it. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.